I'm at it again, another Dollar Tree challenge, making shelf-stable emergency meal kits with only ingredients from Dollar Tree. Let's go. Hey guys, it's Jara with Wicked Prepared. Welcome back to the channel. And if it's your first time here, welcome. I'm glad you're here and I hope you'll join us and stay a while. I love putting together emergency meal kits, also known as meals in a bag. These handy little kits contain everything you need to make a complete meal, including any water needed to prepare it. This way, if there's a disaster, an emergency, or any grid down situation, when the power's out so you can't go rummaging through your fridge and you don't want to search through your dark cabinets and pantry trying to come up with a meal idea, you don't have to. You have these kits already put together, sitting on the shelf. Just grab one and get to cooking. It's always fun to do a Dollar Tree challenge and see what meals we can come up with using only Dollar Tree ingredients. But I'm taking the typical Dollar Tree challenge one step further and using only items from Dollar Tree's shelf-stable grocery section. If your Dollar Tree store has a refrigerated and frozen section, which mine actually doesn't, but if you do, you have access to a lot more items like shredded cheese, eggs, frozen veggies, burgers, and sausage. But we can't use any of that in shelf-stable emergency meals. Let's get right into it and I'll show you the meals that I came up with this time. This first meal is something deliciously different. I made a pierogi lasagna. For some reason, I have always been obsessed with the idea of taking one food and making it into a different form. So like a Reuben casserole, for example, where you take a sandwich and transform it into a casserole. Or breakfast tacos, for example, taking tacos and turning it into a breakfast food. Philly cheesesteak, egg rolls, that type of thing. This pierogi lasagna turns pierogi into a layered casserole. I'm sure pretty much everyone knows what pierogi are, but if you don't, they're a Polish food and I'm sure some other countries as well. They're like little filled dumplings, basically with a pasta type dough shell and a filling. They can be filled with a mashed potato and cheese filling, which is the kind you can get in the grocery store in the United States and what I always had growing up. They can also be filled with other things like meat, mushrooms, or sauerkraut. For this dinner, we are going with the classic potato version. These are the ingredients I'm using for this meal. It is so simple. I've got some lasagna noodles from Dollar Tree. Now these are actually the oven-ready lasagna noodles. I believe Dollar Tree has both kinds, but this is just the kind that I picked up. This recipe won't work as a no-bake noodle recipe, but we're going to cook the noodles first. You can cook these just like you would regular lasagna noodles. And of course, I have some pouch mashed potatoes. These are from Dollar Tree. They have the Idahoan brand. So I've got 2 pouches of these, and these are 4 serving size. So if you're getting them at a different store, that's what you want to look for. I got the butter flavor, the buttery home style. These are complete. They don't need any butter, milk, salt, anything added. That's already in here, which makes them great for emergency cooking. But they do have other flavors. For example, they have this cheddar cheese flavor or 4 cheese flavor that you could use. They might have other flavors that they sell from time to time. I'm just using the regular butter mashed potatoes. I'm also using 2 tubs of this Utz cheese dip, mild cheddar cheese dip, because we need some shelf-stable cheese. And I've got their French fried onions, their crispy onions. I have 2 bags of these onions. These are great for casseroles and things like that. These are one of my favorite meal items at Dollar Tree. And then of course I have some water bottles over here. These are the 16.9 ounce single serving size. I've got 2 of them. And this is what we're going to use for cooking our pasta and our potatoes. And this is everything we need for this meal. So let's go ahead and get it into the bag. Now, one note about the lasagna noodles, we are not going to use the whole length lasagna noodles because I'm making a half-size lasagna, so it's going to be in a small 8 or 9 inch square pan. So I broke these lasagnas in half, and I just did that by putting them against the edge of my counter and snapping them, and that worked really well. Now I have these Mylar bags on hand, so I'm going to be putting mine in the Mylar bag to go in my kit. But you could just as soon use like a Ziploc bag that you could get at Dollar Tree, or put them in anything as long as you think that it will protect them enough to be on your shelf for however long the bag is going to be on your shelf. And we are only using 5 of the noodles out of that package. 5 broken in half, so we have 10 pieces. These are the bags that I typically use. I buy these on Amazon and I have 2 different sizes that I use. This is going to be the larger size bag, but I have bought bags at Dollar Tree before. Sometimes you can find paper gift bags in their party section that are the perfect size for this. They work really well. I use these sticky pockets I put on the front that are for CDs that I also got from Amazon. I'll have links down in the description box to everything that I show here. But if you wanted, you could just get a paper gift bag from Dollar Tree, and you could use a permanent marker or something and write on the front of the bag, write the recipe right on the front of the bag, or just write it on an index card and slip it inside the bag. Another thing you can do is buy the large 2 or 2.5 gallon Ziploc style bags that they sell at Dollar Tree and use those to put your meals in. I've done that as well. All right, now let's get all these ingredients added to the bag. I'm going to start with my 2 bottles of water, and then I'm going to add my lasagna noodles, my 2 packets of mashed potatoes, my 2 tubs of cheese dip, and my 2 bags of crispy onions. And even though it's not an ingredient in the recipe, I am going to throw in a can of green beans because there's no vegetable in this recipe and we want to make sure we have a complete meal. And it is ready to go on the shelf. But today I'm not going to put it on the shelf. I'm going to be fixing these meals up to show you how they come out and how they fix up. So I'm going to be using my butane burner to start this pierogi lasagna. I definitely recommend everybody have one of these for indoor cooking when the power's out. I'm going to start with a small saucepan, just big enough for our noodles to fit. And I'm going to go ahead and pour both of my water bottles right into the pot. And I am going to bring this to a boil, but I'm going to make sure that I have a lid on the pot the whole time for a couple of reasons. Number one, that is going to hold more heat inside the pot, so this will boil faster and use less fuel. And the other reason is that we need all of this water for our recipe, so I don't want it to be evaporating on me. I'm going to go ahead and get my fuel canister in here and get it started. Okay, now that this is just about coming to a boil, I'm going to go ahead and put my noodles in. And I'm going to cook these for 9 minutes because that's the instructions that it gave on the package if you want to cook these oven-ready noodles. They don't require cooking in a normal lasagna recipe, but we'll need them cooked for this recipe. I'm going to go ahead and put the cover back on, like I mentioned, to conserve this water. So I'm just going to turn it way, way down low as I can get it. And just simmer these for 9 minutes. And I'm just going to stir them a few times just to keep them from sticking together. And I'll see you back here when they're done. Okay, so timer's going off, so this is done cooking. But here's what I'm going to do with this. I am not going to drain this like you typically would. I'm actually going to use some tongs to remove the noodles to this plate, and I'm going to leave the hot water right in this pot. I'm just going to get as much of the water off as I can. Be careful doing this so you don't burn yourself, which I may have done a time or two. Yowza. Gosh darn it. All right, so now that all the noodles are out of this pot of water, we're still going to use this. I'm going to go ahead and put both of my packets of mashed potatoes right into this water. All right. And I'm just going to whisk this in here. You could use a whisk or just your spoon or spatula, whatever you have. I'm just going to put the lid back on that and let it set for just 5 minutes. Or however long it takes us to do the next step, whichever comes last. All right, so the next step for this is going to be to start layering in our pan. Now I'm going to use this disposable, I would say this is 8-inch foil pan. This is from Dollar Tree. It comes 2 to a pack and it has lids. I'm using this for a couple of reasons. If it was an emergency situation, you might not want to do extra dishes, so it's nice to have a disposable pan. In fact, sometimes I will put this right into the bag with the meal, with all the ingredients. And the other reason is sometimes when you're using an alternative type of oven to cook in, sometimes they have a limited capacity for size, and so you might have a hard time fitting a pan in. So with these, they're very flexible, so I can just bend the edges up if I need to, kind of make them fit when I need to. Dollar Tree also sells this pan, which is a really nice pan, same size, one of these for $1.25. So you can get one of these for $1.25 or 2 of the disposables for $1.25. So that's up to you, but you would need to make sure with this that it would fit into whatever emergency oven you might use. You might need to bend up the edges a little bit. I'm first going to start with one of my cheddar cheese dips. Remember, I've got 2 of these. I'm going to open it right up, and I am going to take half of this tub. I mean, you don't have to be exact. I'm going to do my best to get half of the tub and put it in the bottom of the pan. I don't have butter or cooking spray. This is going to keep the bottom layer from sticking like butter or cooking spray would do. I'm just going to go ahead and spread this across the bottom of the pan. I feel like no matter what kind of lasagna you're making, you always want some sort of a liquidier type of layer on the bottom that helps keep things from sticking to the bottom. You don't want like your pasta layer on the bottom. It'll dry that pasta right out from the heat at the bottom of the pan. That's been my experience anyways. All right, I like to mess with that a lot, but it doesn't have to be perfect. So next we're going to layer on 1 layer of noodles. And what I have ended up doing with my noodles is just using some scissors to trim them a little bit and make them fit better across the whole pan. But you can totally just use your fingers and rip them or tear them or just cook extra noodles, whatever you want to do. This is how I did it. Now our potatoes should be completely all ready. Just going to give them a little bit of a stir, and then I'm going to flatten them down on the pan so that I can divide them into thirds. Once again, this does not have to be perfect. It's just a rough kind of division. I'm going to start scooping up 1/3 and plopping it down across my pan. The more you spread it out, the easier it will be to get this all spread around without disturbing your layers underneath. So then I'm just going to use my spoon, or you can use whatever you want to kind of spread it out. It's better to kind of push rather than spread at first and try to get it as good as you can, just to leave the bottom layers a little bit more undisturbed. All right, so that's pretty good. Now the next layer is going to be onions. So I'm going to use one of my bags of onions for the layers in between, open them up, and then crunch them up. Opening the bag first helps make sure you don't blow out the seam anywhere. So I'm going to use about half of these onions on each of the middle layers, and then the whole extra bag is going to go on the top. So it's probably going to be about a 1/2 cup on each layer. Remember, it totally does not have to be perfect. Just kind of spread them out as best you can. Now the other thing I've done inside in these middle layers is sprinkled on some of this dehydrated chopped onion that they have at Dollar Tree, and that was equally as good. This was very good. I did not use the whole bottle on the whole casserole, so you would have leftovers if you put this in there, but I did sprinkle it pretty liberally on each of these middle layers. Of course, if you don't like onions at all, or you're allergic to onions, I do know someone who's allergic to onions. In fact, I think I know 2 people who are allergic to onions. You could maybe use bacon in these layers instead. Dollar Tree doesn't sell bacon bits that I've ever seen recently, but they do have imitation bacon bits, and they're actually not bad. So you could substitute that for the onion if you don't want to have the onion in there. I'm going to go ahead and put on the other half of the cheese. Now remember, if you the more you spread it out to start with, the easier it will be to spread around. All right, so now we're just going to spread this out as best we can. Now, if you were making this from fresh ingredients, you could use shredded cheddar cheese here. They even usually have that at Dollar Tree if you have a refrigerated section. And the other thing you could do is you could always throw in some freeze-dried shredded cheddar if you don't like the processed cheese like this dip, but then it wouldn't be a Dollar Tree meal. So I am using this cheddar cheese dip, and we actually really liked it with this. All right, so now we're doing another noodle layer. Once again, I'm just going to trim this off. And we do have 1 extra noodle piece in here from just not needing that even number. So I'm going to use 1 noodle to fill in extra spots. So now I'm putting on another layer of potato. As this potato cools, it's going to get stiffer and a little bit harder to spread. So make sure to spread it out good when you dollop it so that you don't have as much spreading to do afterwards. But you see what I mean when I say that kind of pressing it at first and smushing it out rather than really trying to wipe and spread is going to be the better way to do it. Okay, so now the rest of our onion layer. So that's going to be the rest of this bag of onions. Just kind of breaking up any big pieces that might affect how this slices. And sometimes, because it is Dollar Tree, you will get a little piece of onion skin in it. So I just picked those out. If you can't find these French fried onions or any other ingredients in any of these meals at your Dollar Tree, I'll put some alternatives that I think would work for some of these that you could get at Walmart or a regular grocery store. I'll put them down in the description box below the video, because some of these things can be difficult to find sometimes, like especially this cheese dip they don't always have, so I have an alternative you could use for that. So I'll try to put some things down in the description if I can think of them. Now we're going to go ahead and open up our second thing of cheese dip. And again, half of this tub is going to go on this layer right here. I'm going to go ahead and spread this one out. Okay, final layer. I'm going to add one more layer of noodles. And I do have this much noodle left, so I just like to eat those leftover noodles after I make lasagna, but you could throw it in the casserole if you wanted, whatever you want to do. Feed it to the dog. Next, we're going to be putting on our last potato layer. Now, I'm trying to cover up all these noodles around the edge so we don't get those crispy noodle edges, but I know some people like the crispy noodle edges, so you can do it however you like it. So for this final layer, I am just going to do cheese on the top of the potatoes. It's a slightly different than the other layers. Just going to spread this out. You know, another thing you could use if you don't mind the processed cheese, but you can't find the cheddar cheese dip, is I bet you these Velveeta cheese sauce packets would probably work just as well. And they're about the same size. One packet is roughly the same size as one of these little cups, so 2 of these would probably do you pretty good. I'm going to spread this cheese out here. You know, thinking about it, I don't know why it would matter what order the cheese and onions go in the middle. And it would probably be easier to spread if you put the cheese down first like we're doing here. So I'm not really sure why my brain told me to do the onions first. When I do it with the dehydrated onion flakes, they sink into the potato more and it kind of spreads easier. But either way, it was not too difficult. So either way you want to do it will work. All right, now for our topping, which is going to be the final bag of onions. And I'm just going to sprinkle these all over the top of the casserole and spread them out. Now for the baking part. Now remember, the whole premise with these bags is that we can use these in an emergency when the power might be out. So how do you bake when the power is out? There's several different options, and I will list them all down in the description below the video. But there's only a couple of options that you can use indoors. A lot of them are only safe to use outdoors. So if you are having some bad weather, you can't use your outdoor options. What are your indoor options? Today I'm going to be using my Ember oven, or I'm going to try anyways. That can be used indoors or outdoors. Outdoors with biomass fuel, and indoors only if you use canned heat, which Dollar Tree does sell canned heat. Now in the experimenting I've been doing, I haven't had as good of luck with the stove using the Dollar Tree canned heat. But remember, a lot of these ingredients were already warm when we put them in here. This casserole is already pretty warm. And it really only has to bake for about 20 to 25 minutes at 350. It doesn't need a long baking time. So I think that it'll work in this oven with the Dollar Tree fuel. And here's the thing, this oven takes a long time to preheat, but the beauty of this is you don't have to wait for it to be preheated to put this in the oven. And that goes with almost anything that you cook. You can put your food in while your oven is preheating. There are a few recipes here and there that do depend on going into the oven at a certain temperature. But for the most part, you might as well not waste fuel and utilize the oven as it's preheating. You might just have to adjust your bake time a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and get that oven lit up and put this in, and we'll see how long it takes to bake while it's preheating. Now this is where I was talking about bending up the sides of the pan because it's going to work better. All right, so we've got it in there. The oven is lit. Let's see how long this takes. All right, it's been about 22 minutes and we are up over 100 degrees, getting up to 150. That's not doing too bad. It did say that this oven should take about 25 to 30 minutes, I believe, to heat up to 350. It takes longer than that, definitely, with this Dollar Tree fuel, but like I said, we don't need a whole lot of heat for this casserole. So it has been over an hour and we are struggling to get past 200. Well, I mean, it's past 200, but it's been an hour. I mean, it's definitely heating the casserole, but it just hasn't really crisped up the topping enough for me yet. So we'll let it go a little while longer and decide if I'm going to have to switch to a different fuel or put it in the oven. the real oven. Of course, every time I open it up to check on it, I let out some of that heat that we took so long to build up. Okay guys, here's what I found out with my experiment trying to run this oven on the Dollar Tree canned heat fuel. After an hour and 10 minutes, the oven had only gotten up barely above 200 degrees. I didn't think it was going to work, but I let it go a little bit longer, and by the time it had been about an hour and a half, the cans had completely burned out and it never really got much hotter. So basically, the Dollar Tree canned heat will not work for this Ember oven, but I did switch over to some Sam's Club 6-hour canned heat, and that worked fine. I was able to get it up to 350 in under half an hour, which is what the instructions say will happen. And by this time, because I left the casserole in the whole time it was preheating, it was basically done by the time it reached temperature. With this casserole, everything starts out kind of warm, and so really by the time the onions crisp on the top, I know it's done. All right, so the Sam's Club fuel for the win, that is more on par with what we're supposed to have. It's been between 25 and 30 minutes, and we are at 350 degrees. That looks like 350 degrees. So since I had the casserole, I hesitate to open the door because every time I do, it lets out a little bit of the heat. But since we had the casserole in there while it was preheating, I'm just going to see how it's looking now. Okay, now you can see the onions are browning. That's really just the only thing that I look for because that is what we need. It's for those onions to be browning. And if that's happening, then the casserole is cooked through. So this is done. All right, here we go. Here is our pierogi lasagna with the browned crispy onions on the top. It's fresh out of the Ember oven and it is ready to, just about ready to serve. I'm going to let this cool off for a few minutes before I cut into it. All right, this is ready to serve. Wow. Look at that. This is so hearty and so delicious. All right, I am going to give it a try. This is probably my favorite Dollar Tree meal that I have ever made. Oh, delicious. The next meal that we're going to make is a great meal for summer because it's a cold main dish salad. So it's going to be a chicken bacon ranch pasta salad. And I'm starting off easy with these Suddenly Salad bacon ranch pasta salad mixes. And I do have 3 of them here. I've got 3 boxes. The reason I have 3 boxes is because these Dollar Tree boxes, number one, are smaller than the typical box you get at the grocery store. You'll see that it says it only has 2 servings. So the one they sell at Walmart has 4.5 servings. So these are smaller packages, but also you'll see that it calls for 1/3 of a cup of mayonnaise for making the recipe. And at Dollar Tree, they have this 8-ounce container of mayonnaise. So this is a cup of mayonnaise. So this is the perfect amount for 3 boxes of salad. And that's going to be, according to them, 6 servings, but this is side dish servings. So we're having it as a main dish. This would probably be more like a 4-serving meal, which is perfect, I believe. And then adding to the salad, I am going to be putting in 2 cans of Dollar Tree chicken because we're going to add some protein so we can make it more of a complete meal. If you wanted even more protein, I think that you could stir in a can of beans, drained and rinsed beans of some sort. A light colored bean would be best. I feel like even garbanzo beans would be good in this. And it does have little bits of veggies. You can see on the package, there are little bits of dehydrated veggies that are in here, but it's not going to amount to much of a veggie serving. If you wanted, you could stir in a can of veggie like peas or corn, but I am adding a can of pineapple tidbits, not to stir into it, but just to serve alongside, because a nice summer meal, I think, would be a cold main dish salad and some fruit. I've got a couple bottles of water here for cooking the pasta. And then I also added 1 small bottle. This is probably optional, but these call for rinsing the pasta after you drain it. And that's going to cool it off more quickly and also remove some of the extra starch so that the sauce can be a little more silky. So I threw this in to be able to rinse with, but if you are not in an emergency situation, you can go ahead and just rinse it under your tap. And if you are in a really desperate emergency and water is really lacking, you might just want to skip using this to rinse and just let this cool off, naturally. And that will be just fine. All right, let's get this put in the bag. I'm going to start with my 3 boxes of Suddenly Salad. And next, my can of fruit, my 2 cans of chicken, my jar of mayo, and all my bottles of water. And now this bag is ready to go on the shelf. All right, so now we're gonna fix up this pasta salad, and I'm gonna use my butane burner. I'm gonna start by emptying both of my large water bottles into the pot. Now, one thing I am going to do before we cook the pasta is I'm going to open up these cans of chicken, and I'm also going to drain the broth from these cans into my pasta water, because we don't want to waste any water if we're in an emergency situation, any liquid. And this will just help to flavor the pasta a little bit, add a little bit of salt and a little bit of flavor. It'll be just like adding a little bit of chicken bouillon to our water. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And I'm also going to place a lid on the pot just to conserve all the heat and the water. Go ahead and turn this on high and bring this up to a boil so we can add our pasta. And while that's heating, I'm going to go ahead and open up the boxes of pasta and take out the seasoning packets, get the pasta ready to dump in when this is boiling. Okay, so that didn't take long. This is coming up to a boil, so I'm going to go ahead and add all 3 of my boxes of pasta. Of course, it has the little veggie bits in it as well. Give that a stir. And this says to cook it for 11 minutes. So I'm going to put the lid back on. I'm going to turn the heat down, and I'm going to set a timer. Okay, so it's been 11 minutes. I'm going to go ahead and drain this. So you can see that there are some veggies in here, but it's really not a lot. So that's why if you really wanted this to be a complete meal, you either need to stir in a can of veggies into the mixture or serve something alongside so you have a fruit or veggie. I'm going to go ahead and drain this in the sink, and then I'm going to take my small bottle of water and just run it over to rinse it and cool it off, and then I'll be right back. Okay, so the pasta has been drained and rinsed, and I'm going to let it cool off a little bit because that one bottle of water isn't going to cool it as much as like a whole running tap water over it would if you could just run unlimited tap water. So if you are not in a situation where water is an issue, obviously you can just rinse it in your sink. I'm going to let mine cool, and while I'm doing that, I am going to mix up the dressing. So I'm going to go ahead and put my whole jar of mayonnaise right into my bowl. I could use a nice serving bowl, but I'm just going to use a Tupperware type of container, Rubbermaid, so that I can have a lid to put on it and not have extra dishes to wash. All right, so I've got my mayonnaise. And these are my 3 seasoning packets from my 3 boxes of pasta mix. I'm going to go ahead and dump these right into here and mix it up. All right, so now the dressing is ready. So as soon as the pasta's cool, I'm going to go ahead and mix it right into the dressing, and then I will add the chicken. Okay, now that the pasta is cooled, I'm going to go ahead and add it into the dressing. You don't want to add your dressing to your pasta when it's hot, because the heat will curdle the mayonnaise and kind of cook the egg portion of it and make it separate from the oil. I had to learn that the hard way when I was young and just learning how to cook. It would still taste the same, but it doesn't look very good. So I'm just going to go on ahead and start mixing this in. And now that the pasta and the dressing are well mixed, I'm going to go ahead and add my chicken. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and mix that all in. I waited till the end on the chicken just so it wouldn't get too broken up into too small of pieces when I mixed it in, because I wanted some bigger pieces of chicken. And this kind of canned meat can tend to get really shredded if you have to mix it a lot. All right, there we go. If you have electricity or you have a generator you're running and you can open your fridge, you can go ahead and put this in the fridge and refrigerate it for a little while. But it could be eaten just like this. It is cold. It cooled off, so you could eat it like this. Or we also have a few coolers that we can run off of either our vehicles or our power stations. I will put a link to what I'm talking about down in the comments, and that is something that we sometimes break out if we need refrigeration when the power's out. So you could also use something like that to chill this a little bit, but it could absolutely be eaten just like this without chilling. And this would be a great meal for a summer evening or afternoon. Okay, it is time to serve the pasta salad. I did refrigerate this for just a little while, but like I mentioned, it could totally be eaten at room temperature. Look how good that looks. It smells amazing. It has that bacon smell. And of course, we have the pineapple to serve alongside to make a lovely light summer meal. The next meal we're going to do is a minestrone soup. Now this one is a meatless meal, and what we're using for this is going to be some macaroni noodles. I'm not going to use this whole box of macaroni noodles. This is a lot of noodles, so I'm going to be using a 1 cup mason jar, half pint, to put some of the noodles in. You could put them in anything, a bag, whatever you think will contain them and keep them safe during the time that this is on the shelf. I've got some beans here. These are red beans. I would have preferred kidney beans for my minestrone, or even some like cannellini beans, but this pinto beans and garbanzo beans were all I could find at my Dollar Tree. Garbanzo beans wouldn't be bad in it, but I'd want a regular shaped bean too. And then I've got a can of mixed vegetables. I've got this can of Hunt's spaghetti sauce that they have at Dollar Tree. I've got a 4 cup, 32 ounce box of broth that they sell. And then over here, I've got a few things that are just for serving the soup. So I've got some Parmesan cheese that people can shake on the top. And I am putting in a bag of croutons into this meal to put on top of the soup. But you could also include a thing of oyster crackers. This is also from Dollar Tree. Now with a meal like this, you're going to want to watch out for certain ingredients like that. Those are going to be the first things that would go bad. Things like crackers, croutons, the mayonnaise in another meal. Those are going to be the things that are going to expire the fastest. So you're going to want to keep an eye on the dates on those. They're going to go longer than their dates, but you're going to want to keep an eye and at least rotate those out at least every year or so, 6 months to a year. If you haven't used the meal yet, then make a point to take out at least some of the ingredients. Either make the meal for a dinner or take out some of the ingredients, put them into your pantry, make sure they get used, and replace them with fresh ones. If you wanted something like the croutons or the crackers to last longer, you could put them also into a mason jar and vacuum seal it, and they would last longer than they would in their original packages. All right, let's go ahead and get these into the bag. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and add my chicken broth, my pasta sauce, my beans, my mixed veggies. I'm going to go ahead and put in my jar of pasta. That's about a cup. My shaker of Parmesan cheese. Make sure you have the little shaker. This shaker is real Parmesan cheese. The large one that they have is a blend of yucky fillers. And this actually is more than we'll need for this soup anyways. And then I'm going to put in my topping. And this bag is ready to go on the shelf. I'm going to be using my butane stove again to fix up this soup. And a soup pot. I'm going to start by putting in my spaghetti sauce. And this does remind me, make sure that you have a manual can opener in your emergency supplies. And if you're not certain you'll have an emergency can opener, I have sometimes stuck the P38 or P, whatever the other one is, can openers right in the bag because they're little and they're inexpensive. This is going to give us the tomatoey component of our broth along with some extra seasonings that plain old canned tomatoes wouldn't have. Next, I'm going to add my broth, and I'm going to go ahead and use this to rinse out the tomato sauce can. And next, I'm going to add my other canned items. I am not going to drain these because we want to conserve all the liquid that we can. It's just going to add a little bit of extra salt and flavoring to our broth. All right, I'm going to go ahead and put on the heat. And once again, I'm going to add a lid to my pot and bring it up to a simmer. Get everything all nice and heated through. Okay, so now the soup is steaming and just beginning to come to a bubble, you can see. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my macaroni. And I'm going to give that a stir. It doesn't look like much now, but the macaroni will absorb some of the broth and it will swell up and it will take up a lot more of the soup. I'm going to go ahead and lower the heat and simmer this with the lid on until the macaroni is cooked through. And that's going to be about 11 minutes. So I will set my timer. Alrighty, let's see. There we go. I think that is ready. So that was a total of 13 minutes because the range on the macaroni was 11 to 13 minutes cooking time. I think this looks pretty good and ready to serve. I'm just going to let it cool off a tiny bit so nobody burns their mouth. There is our bowl of soup, and let's top it with some cheese and some croutons. Bon appetit! That actually tastes pretty darn good. It's a little hot. I like the croutons. I think some members of my family would like the crackers. You could always put both. I think it has good flavor. I thought I might have to add some bouillon or something, but if you did feel like you needed bouillon, Dollar Tree sells bouillon powder, and I think they sometimes sell the cubes, and you could even put that right in the jar with the macaroni if you use the powder. And don't forget, Dollar Tree also sells little salt and pepper shaker sets that you could throw in this meal or any of these meals if you felt like you needed that. And the other thing is, if you save salt and pepper packets from restaurants, or you can also purchase them from Amazon, that could be a good thing to throw into any of these meals in case anyone wanted a little extra seasoning. For one last Dollar Tree meal, I thought it would be good to do something fun and something that would not require any cooking or heating if that wasn't an option. It's always important to have some meals that are going to be okay if you have to eat them at room temperature and that don't need to be cooked or heated. So I am going to do nachos for this meal. I have been finding these packets of spicy seasoned beef crumbles, basically taco meat, at my Dollar Tree lately. But if you can't find these, because sometimes when Dollar Tree gets something like this, you never know if it's going to be a permanent part of the product line or if they're just going to get a big bunch of them and then once they're gone, they're gone. But if you can't find these at your Dollar Tree, you could use chili in its place. I've done that before. And Dollar Tree sells several different types of chili. They sell their brand, which isn't the greatest, but on something like nachos, I think it would be okay. They have it in beef and in chicken. They have the Wolf brand chili usually in the individual cups, and they actually have packets of chili like this. So there's several different options for chili at Dollar Tree if you needed to go that route. So I've got a bag of chips here. I've got my packets of beef crumbles. The good thing about these is they're kind of smaller packets. They say they have 3 servings, but that probably depends on how hungry you are. But I think you could include whatever number of packets would provide a good meal for your family. And then you wouldn't have to open one if you had people who weren't hungry or if you overjudged and you had too many. So then I've also got a thing of nacho cheese dip. I thought this would be a good option for some cheese on our nachos. This is pretty good to eat without heating. You can heat it if you want, but the beef is the one thing that would probably be a little bit better if it was heated for the nachos, but it'll be just fine to eat it at room temperature. If you do want to heat something like this, these pouches can be heated in some warm water in a pan. Just put the whole pouch in the warm water. And those can heat from Dollar Tree. They didn't work for the oven, but they are sufficient for warming your food. If you check out my Dollar Tree 72-hour kit video, you can see how I use them to make a makeshift emergency stove. So besides the cheese dip, I've also got a guacamole style dip here. I really like this dip, and when I have nachos, I like to have something creamy like sour cream. You can't get sour cream shelf stable at Dollar Tree, but this dip kind of does the trick for me. It's almost like a mix between a guacamole and a sour cream. It's a creamy guacamole style dip. And then I have some sliced black olives here from Dollar Tree. This is about as close as we're going to get to a veggie in this meal, because honestly, if we're eating something junky like nachos, we're probably not going to be worried about whether we're getting our fruit or veggie in. If you are feeding kids maybe a can of fruit, maybe they'd be willing to go for something like that. But sometimes it's just about survival and about filling your bellies, especially in an emergency situation. So I'm not going to worry too much about the fruit or veggie in this case. And another thing that I sometimes find at Dollar Tree are paper trays like this. That would be great for serving the nachos. Or I also found at my Dollar Tree just now, I think they're left over from Cinco de Mayo, it's a pack of taco shaped plates, paper plates, which are about half the size of a regular paper plate. These would both be great for individual servings of nachos that you could do up individually for each member of your family. Or alternatively, you could just have a big plate or platter and make one large plate of nachos for everyone to share. Just another couple options for you. If you are trying to do this on a smaller scale for less people, you could use either one of these small cups of cheddar cheese dip or the jalapeno cheese sauce packets from Velveeta that they have at Dollar Tree. And one more note is that the chips are going to have the shortest shelf life probably of anything in this meal. They should last at least 6 months. So if you're rotating this out every 6 months or so, it should be fine. But you might want to throw in a packet of the pre-cooked rice from Dollar Tree just in case your chips went bad and you didn't want to eat the chips. If they got stale or rancid or anything like that, you'd have another option to put your toppings over. Let's go ahead and get this fun meal in the bag. All right, I am going to start with my chips. And next, I'm going to throw in 2 packets of the meat. You can add however many packets your family will use. My nacho cheese dip, my guacamole dip, and my black olives. And then I am going to throw in the paper boats. And now this bag is ready for the shelf. All right, let's fix up these nachos. I'm going to use one of these little boats. Now, this is actually something you could even have each family member do individually, put together their own nachos. That could be a fun little activity for a rough situation. Just going to spread some chips in the bowl and open up my meat. Now, keep in mind, if you are during a time when you do have electricity, you could always just heat these in the microwave. Because a lot of people also use these meals just for, you know, busy nights when they need a quick dinner, and that helps keep them rotated. So there's also options when you might be doing this and you might actually have electricity. So open up the meat, and I'm just going to try to spread this on top of the nachos. Let's see if we can do it without utensils. Now we'll go with some cheese dip. Now you can do a much nicer job with this if you used a spoon and all that and tried to do it nicely, but I'm just trying to do this emergency style with as few dishes as possible. You can use the lid to spread this around a little bit. And now the guacamole style dip. And honestly, guys, I'm not kidding when I say I actually really like this stuff. It's one of my favorite dips that they have. If I need a quick snack and I'm out shopping, sometimes I'll grab this and a bag of pork rinds for a lowish carb snack. This does have 3 grams. And it actually does have some avocado in it. It's obviously not real guacamole, but I'm just going to put a dollop over here so that it can be dipped into rather than spreading it across the top. And now the olives, I am going to drain these. Of course, you could reserve this liquid and use it in something else. If you were in a dire emergency and you really needed all the liquid you could get, all the water you could get. But I am just going to sprinkle a few olives across the top of these nachos. And in true Dollar Tree style, the sliced olives are not really that well sliced. There's a whole one right there. That's not a big deal. They taste good. All right, so here is our nachos. It's not super fancy, but honestly, my kids would love to dig into this while we're hunkered down at home. And this was done without even heating. You could totally heat this meat. You could even heat the cheese if you had the facilities, and it would be even better. Now you have a whole collection of new meal in a bag recipes to fill your shelves. Just keep in mind when Dollar Tree shopping, I do these meal challenges because it's fun to challenge myself to come up with Dollar Tree recipes because they're so limited. And for some people, that might be their only option for shopping. But for most of us who do have other options, keep in mind that Dollar Tree is not always the least expensive option. There's plenty of items there that you can actually get cheaper at Walmart or another grocery store. You also might have access to better quality options at another store. And you can't always find all the same items all the time at any given Dollar Tree location. So if you have options, you can possibly do even better. If you made it all the way to the end of the video, leave me an SOS emoji down in the comments. And if you love Dollar Tree videos, check out our whole Dollar Tree playlist right up here. I'm Jara with Wicked Prepared. Survive today, thrive tomorrow. We'll see you next time.